I'm going to be speaking to you today about the caregiver stress experience. This is the first of a series of short videos that we're posting on the caregiver stress experience. I'm going to be talking about what that experience is like so that you can see if any of it resonates with you and feels right. And then the other videos are going to talk about sort of if you did hear yourself in what I was saying, what can you do about it? So I'm going to begin by sharing my screen. Just give me 1 second. Here we go. Okay. So as I say, we're going to begin talking about the caregiver stress experience. So the caregiver stress experience is a very common one. And I would just want to begin by saying being a caregiver is hard regardless of whether or not you're caregiving for someone who has, health needs or whatnot. I'm a parent myself. And there's a lot of things about being a parent that are hard, even if your kids are doing great, or even if the person you're caring for is doing great. But when they're not, that's when it really ratchets up that stress. So let's talk a little bit about that. I just want to begin by kind of acknowledging what the vision most people have of being a caregiver is like. So in the movies, caregivers, oh my gosh, they're so amazing. They're calm, they're saintly, they're unruffled. They love doing the caregiving. They have boundless energy, infinite warmth and they have almost no needs of their own, which is really interesting and not in all in keeping with human nature. And so their whole purpose is to be fulfilled by the act of caregiving. Um, Now, this just really does not reflect reality in my experience. However much we may want it to, we may really want that for the person that we're caregiving for, but it's just those are not realistic expectations. So we hold ourselves to this ideal and we really feel like a failure when we can't meet it, but you can't meet it. That's not how humans are designed. You're just a human. You can't do that. It's not possible. Um, and we want this both because of our own kind of sense of self, but also because we really love typically the person we're caregiving for. And we want to be the best caregivers we can because we love this person so much. So, in addition to just plain old everyday caregiving, being a parent, caring for aging parents, and so forth, um, caregiving for a loved one with physical and mental health difficulties is just really ramping up an already challenging experience. It is very emotionally demanding work, messy work, physically or emotionally, and just hard, really, really hard. And this is really exacerbated when you have other stressors in your life as well. So those might be those can take a variety of different forms. So it might be that the caregiving experience is stressful for you when it negatively impacts your ability to care for other people in your life who you also love and would like to care for. And that's its own source of stress. You feel like you're letting down other people. Maybe you had to stop working or take a step back from your job. That's a whole other sort of stress. There can be financial stress, but also like identity stress. A lot of folks get a sense of identity from their job. Like I'm doing this, I'm good at this, I'm helping society, in whatever way. And so I'm providing for my family. And so it takes away that kind of, that sense of, identity in addition to any financial hurdles, which can be quite substantial. It can also be complicated by like very, very profound worry for your person or for yourself for the future. What's it going to look like for this person? Once they age out of my health insurance plan, or what's it going to look like for this person in adulthood, or what's it going to look like for this person if something happens to me? So there's a lot of worries, and those really make this already stressful experience just that much more stressful. Another thing that can happen uh, is that you can really grieve for the loss of the future you imagined for this person. So if, for example, it's your child, you might be grieving for the loss of what you thought your child was going to have, and maybe they're not, or time you thought you were going to have with your spouse that is looking, like it will be different and maybe not exactly what you have envisioned. You thought you'd have more time with a parent. So just that you have we all have these ideas about the future with people we love. And so losing that is actually can be actually a form of grief, which is interesting. But also certainly makes again a stressful experience that much more stressful. Another thing I really want to say is that caregiving stress is usually extremely isolating. It is very common to be deeply alone or feel deeply alone in your caregiving experience. Depending on the circumstances, there can also be this like very clear before and after, like life was just humming along and then there was the diagnosis, be it cancer or some other kind of diagnosis. And it really feels like that life stopped and a new one began, sort of like you entered an alternate reality. And that is extremely stressful and discombobulating. It can also just be lonely in the sense that other people in your life, even people who love you, just may not fully get it. And sometimes their efforts to support you can actually even make you feel worse, which is hard. It may just feel like you're having this experience and you look around and other people aren't, and you just feel so kind of deeply and profoundly alone. Kind of like there's this invisible wall between you and everyone else. Really, really isolating. Okay, so with all that said, what are some signs that all of these stressors I mentioned, or that some of these stressors are really pushing you past your limit? You're feeling more irritable than usual. Big one, big one. You're feeling overwhelmed easily. So you're feeling like if someone adds one more thing to my plate, I'm gonna crack. You might have trouble sleeping. You might have a poor appetite, or either you're eating less or you're eating more, or turning to unhealthy foods as a way of coping with stress. You might find your substance use has increased, again, as a way of coping with the stress. Those isolated and lonely feelings, those are actually themselves just a sign, because we are an extremely social species, and we don't actually do well when we feel isolated. It's actually not particularly good for us as just as human beings. You might find that you either alternate between crying more, or paradoxically, you kind of feel numb or apathetic. And so it can be one of those two. So if you see either one of those, that's a red flag for you. You might experience what we call in the psychology biz, we call it anhedonia. That's the technical name. But what it really means is the loss of interest or pleasure in sort of activities that you used to enjoy. So if, for example, you used to really enjoy, I don't know, Friday movie night, and now you could care less about Friday movie night, that's a sign that caregiving has pushed you back, past your limit. You might have less energy. And in more extreme situations, you might find that your own personal hygiene has changed, that you've stopped grooming. And that's where it's really gone too far. But it doesn't have to get that bad before you start seeking help. So let's talk about that. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to close down my video, and then we've got several amazing students and faculty colleagues who are going to record their own videos talking about specific skills you can use when you feel overwhelmed. And I really hope you enjoy.